Chapter 7, More Surprises. At halftime, Speedy and I headed off toward the locker room together. Guys sat in chairs, offense on the left, defense on the right. Those who played always sat closer to the whiteboard to hear Coach go over what we had done and what we needed to do. As always, I hung with my friends from the bench in the back of the group, by the lockers, as Coach reviewed the game on the overhead projector. He was breaking down one of the plays we ran when he looked up, scanned the room, and located me. "Jennings, get to the front." Pleased, I pressed through the crowd of guys and squatted down in front. I was grinning from ear to ear. I was used to goofing off, so I hit the guy's butt next to me, whispering, "Hey, what's up, man?" I did not know how to handle myself. "Pay attention," he whispered. I forgot I was supposed to be being serious because I felt like a little kid at an amusement park. But if Coach was going to keep me in the game, which I desperately hoped he would, I had to be up to speed. Willing myself to be serious, I focused on the coach's words. On the way out of the locker room, players were hitting me on the back, encouraging me to keep going. "Hey, Rashad, we're proud of you. Keep doing your thing." Back in the game at the top of the third quarter, our defensive ends and linebackers kept getting hurt. It was just like what happened to the offense in the first half of the game. One defensive end went down. A second defensive end went down. Coaches moved a linebacker to the line, and he got hurt too. I was watching and thinking, what in the world? I overheard our starting tight end say, "Coach, Jennings is better than half those dudes. I go against him every day. Put Jennings in." And before I knew it, I was playing defensive end. So not only was I playing in my first game ever, but now I was playing a position I didn't know. I lined up beside two guys I'd known for years. One was one of the best linebackers I ever played with. "I like seeing you in," he said as he patted me on the butt. "Let's go, Jennings." Thank you. When the Brookville's quarterback said, "Hike," I came off the edge, pulling a swing move on the offensive tackle who was trying to block me and making him miss. The quarterback was sitting in the pocket looking for a receiver. He was about to throw the ball when I came from his blind side. I hit him and knocked the mess out of him. The crowd went wild. Every player on the Bees and on the Cavaliers yelled, "Fumble!" I heard "fumble," and as I was driving the quarterback to the ground and realized the ball was loose, I shot up, picked up the ball, and ran it for my third touchdown, this time on defense. "Hey man," I said to the referee, all ecstatic and super confident, "get used to seeing me." I was trying so hard to get that guy to smile, and he wouldn't break. Moments later, I headed back out onto the field. Having scored all three of our team's touchdowns, I pinched myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. The score was now 21-24, Brookville, and they had the ball. There was 1 minute and 19 seconds left in the game. We needed to find a way to get the football back in our hands. Coach called a timeout, and the players on the field ran in. Looking my way, he said, "Jennings, we need you." What? They were words I'd only dreamed of hearing. So I joined the huddle with Coach on the sideline. As someone who'd found peace with my role as a supporting member of the team, this was the first moment I truly felt like I was an equal to the rest of the guys who'd been playing all year. Maurice called a cover 2 blitz, rushing the quarterback to disrupt any attempt to pass. We came off the edge and I got the sack, and then we called a timeout right away. Now there was 1 minute left. Next play, 2nd down and 15, and Brookville ran the ball. I knew that all they had to do was run the clock out and punt on 4th down if needed, but the running back only got about 3 yards before we called another timeout. We still had 50 seconds on the clock. It was 3rd down and 12. At defensive end, I was searching for every possible cue of their offense for what was about to happen. I noticed that their running back scanned the field way too much, giving me every indication that they might not be running the ball this time, which would have been the natural play to make. I wondered why he was looking around when all they had to do was run the ball and end the game. When the Brookville quarterback dropped back, I felt a screen play developing because the Bees' offensive lineman was supposed to block me, but he didn't. Because I put in so many years on the scout team, I knew just what that meant. This was one of those fortunate if moments for me. While a lot of guys I played with saw scouts team as second best, I saw it as the best training ground for becoming the player I wanted to be. Because of the countless hours I put into those scrimmages, I learned to sense what was happening on the field as it was happening. If I had given up because I wasn't seeing playing time, I would have not been prepared for that important moment. Reading the backfield, I snuck behind the offensive linemen as they were running out. The quarterback, who didn't see me, threw the ball to the running back for a screen. But anticipating where the ball was going, I intercepted it out of nowhere, catching everyone by surprise, and running it 40 yards. I scored again. The end is near. With 34 seconds left in the game, we kicked off and Brookville ran one pass play, which was incomplete. They had to end the game with a Hail Mary, which was unsuccessful, and the crowd erupted into a deafening roar when the final whistle blew. Fans wearing Jefferson Forest colors rushed onto the field, almost tearing down a goalpost in their excitement. I even caught a glimpse of Butch and Brian near the 40-yard line, giving me thumbs up and yelling, "That's it, Jennings, that's how we do it." My teammates, hugging me and slapping me, were going wild. Maurice ran up and gave me a big bear hug, but before I left the field, I went up to that ref, determined to get him to respond. "Hey man, you ever see someone score 4 touchdowns in a row?" He finally looked at me and gave me a wink. Thrilled I succeeded in penetrating his exterior, I gave him a big old hug. I knew I wasn't supposed to touch him, but I did it anyway. As we lined up to shake hands with the Bees, I noticed the little kids who had been playing along the fence at the edge of the field. I was once that little kid, imagining that I was my older brother when he was playing for Jefferson Forest. Suddenly, I was seeing little kids playing and pretending to be me. That blew me away. Speedy was standing there in line with his hands on his hips, shaking his head. "Look at you," he said, beaming, "looking like a shining star." A line of Brookville players streamed past saying, "Good game, good game, good game." When I passed their running back, he looked at me with respect and said, "Man, you killed it out there today." That was cool to hear. In the swirl of activity on the field, a news reporter ran up to me and said, "Rashad." I turned around to find a huge camera in my face with a bright light shining in my eyes and a microphone extended in my direction. I was never interviewed before, and I had no idea what to say. The reporter asked, "Rashad, where did you come from? You've never played, and we don't even have you on our list. We've never spoken to you before, but today you've become a legend. You played 14 total plays and scored 4 touchdowns. How does it feel?" Still feeling like they were talking to the wrong guy, I said, "I don't know, it feels great, I guess." Trying to throw me a bone, the reporter offered another question. "So how does it feel to end Brookville's season? I know..." Oh, y'all, look at the little pictures of him when he was a baby. Sorry. I'll go to the pictures. I'm going to go to the pictures at the end, though, because they're nice. So how does it feel to end Brookville's season? I know you don't get to move on to the playoffs, but this has got to be a bittersweet way for you to finish. "Yeah," I stammered, "bittersweet." The next thought that passed through my mind was bit old honey candy, almond bits, and a honey-flavored taffy. Should I mention that? Luckily, at that moment, one of my teammates came to save me. "Come on, Rashad," he coaxed. "Come celebrate." In the locker room, everyone was giving each other high fives, proud that we ended the season the right way. Coach rallied everyone together. "Come on, men, bring it in." He looked around at us. "Y'all fought. Y'all stayed in the game. You never gave up." Then he paused and said, "But boy, what about Jennings? Where is he?" All the guys cheered when I stood up. Coach handed me the ball, a huge honor for anyone, but especially for a guy like me. As I was leaving the locker room to go see my family, there was someone waiting for me. "Rashad," the man said. "Your name's Rashad, right?" I looked up and saw the white Tennessee logo stitched across his orange golf shirt. I nodded, surprised. This was a Tennessee scout who came to see Quincy. What was he doing talking to me? "Rashad, I couldn't help but notice you tonight." I couldn't believe this was happening. "So tell me, son," he continued, "how are your grades?" Uh-oh. Almost immediately, I deflated like a pin-pricked balloon. I hedged. Leaning in closer to hear me better, the scout looked politely puzzled. I raised my voice a bit and said, I have a .6. "A .6 what?" "Not proud of it," I said. "A .6 GPA. Then I looked down at the ground, ashamed. The scout burst out laughing. "You gotta try to do something like that." I didn't know what to say. All I could do was shrug my shoulders. "Listen, son, you have potential," the scout said kindly. "Get your grades right, because you could play at the next level." They were right. There they were. The 3 magic words I wanted to hear my whole life. For the first time in my entire life, outside of people like my mom and my brothers who I expected to support me, I heard someone say, "You have potential." That confirmation coming not only from someone who wasn't obligated to support me, but also from someone with an awful lot of credibility, felt amazing. From the moment the words left his lips, they were carved in my heart. I would cling to them in the months and years to come. After the scout walked off, I started crying. I was happy, exhausted, and overwhelmed, not just with what had happened that night, but with what my future could be. I hurried out onto the field to look for my family. I had to tell my mom what had happened. I scanned the crowd for my mom. Coach grabbed his clipboard from the bench and said, "Rashad, we're going to have plans for you next year." "Thanks, Coach," I said, more than a little surprised. Proving myself to the coach felt just as good as hearing those 3 magic words from the scout. When I finally saw Mom, I noticed that Butch and Brian were still with her. They knew I hadn't seen a minute of playing time all season and would thank you and would probably have been on the bench this game too, but they were both determined to support their brother and came anyway. Butch and Brian were both friends with Wayne Lance, who also came with them. He was the head coach at the private school in town where Butch and Brian had been coaching that year, Lynchburg Christian Academy. When we all met up, my brothers were raving. Mom, tickled to death, reached around my big body to give me a huge hug. With the biggest smile, she told me how my brothers had acted during the game. "Lord," she exclaimed, "they were excited. When you made that first touchdown, Butch jumped the fence. The security guard had to tell him to get back up into the stands. Your brothers were shouting and hugging and laughing. I'm so proud of you, baby." It was such a sweet moment for my family. I wish my dad had been there to share it. Butch's instructions. 2 years earlier, when I was in 9th grade, Butch had been living and ministering in Raleigh, North Carolina, when a visiting preacher had spoken a word of prophecy to him. Butch received it as God's word to him. "Butch," the preacher had said, "you need to go back and cover your brother as a mentor, like a father would. Your brother has NFL written all over him. Together, you will do great things. Butch knew that covering meant supporting and providing an extra layer of protection and guidance. Because Brian was in transition from NFL teams, Butch's first thought was, Brian, well, that makes sense. He needs me. The pastor who spoke the word to Butch crossed paths with him after the service and clarified, Young man, it's not the brother you're thinking of. You have a younger brother. I hear God saying it's him that needs you. Butch was shocked. What is this guy talking about? Rashad? He's only 15. What great things is he going to do? All that knucklehead does is play video games, joke around, and chill with his boys. Lord, he's got food and candy wrappers stashed under his bed. Are you sure? I thought the same thing when Butch came home and called a meeting to share the prophecy with our family. God had spoken to him about me. Butch had no idea what the Lord had in store for me, but as a man of faith, he was excited about whatever it was. In fact, it's the reason he moved back to Lynchburg. Butch wanted me to live with him and his family so that he could train me like a real father would, but Mom wasn't having that. So throughout my high school years, while I continued to live with my folks, Butch supported me and mentored me. Although I hadn't heard God's voice in the same way Butch had, I was really clear that God was with me, just like he was with Butch. I knew God loved me and had good plans for me, and I even believed God was the one who'd given me the drive to work my tail off until the moment of opportunity came. I was learning that God leads, prepares, and speaks to all of us differently. As my family piled into Mom's car, I was still buzzing with excitement about the amazing game I just played. I had no idea that it would also be my last game at Jefferson Forest. Chapter 8.